Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here. So, America and its allies are committed to preventing Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons, and we are committed to protecting our allies throughout the region, including Israel. This dual-track policy that we're on now, imposing tough sanctions on Iran while engaging them diplomatically, I think reflects this commitment. And that approach has clearly brought Iran to the negotiating table, produced an interim deal that is a promising first step toward achieving our goals in the region. Of course, the interim deal doesn't give us everything that we want. That's the nature of a negotiation. Each side has to give a little, but it's certainly no giveaway to Iran. They made critical concessions. The core existing sanctions on their oil and banking sectors remain fully in force, and all the sanctions relief in the deal provide are time-limited and fully reversible. More importantly, it seems to me the interim deal is a necessary step in reaching a final deal. So I'd like your view on that, Undersecretary Sherman. Could the U.S. plausibly hope to get a final agreement that prevents an Iranian nuclear weapons program without an interim deal of this kind?
Thank you very much, Senator. You know, I think Secretary Kerry has said, I have said, and the President of the United States has said, we wish we could have gotten a comprehensive agreement in the first stage. There's no doubt we would all be happier to have a comprehensive agreement, but it simply was not available. It was not possible. And so what we thought was critical was to get this first step and stop the advance of their nuclear program, to put time on the clock to negotiate that comprehensive agreement. Not too much time on the clock, because we didn't want them to play games, but enough time to really see if we could get that negotiation underway and fulfilled. So in our view, we needed this first step to put that time on the clock. We understand that our very strong ally partner, Israel, tactically believes we should have waited for a comprehensive agreement, that we should have kept sanctioning and hoped that Iran would capitulate. But our concern with that is, because it is a culture of resistance, as we were just discussing, that it would take a very long time. And although it might ultimately happen, though it might not, all that while they would be advancing their nuclear program. And since the time for breakout was already short, it would become shorter and shorter, leaving us with very difficult options and diplomacy fading away.
Good.
So,
and if I can just follow up just a little bit here. To be clear, Undersecretary Cohen, the value of the temporary sanctions relief, I take it from all you've said, is minuscule in comparison to Iran's economy, even in its greatly weakened state. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator Warren. The total value of this deal is in the $6 to $7 billion range. That is about 1% of Iran's GDP. It doesn't come close to closing the budget deficit that Iran faces, which is in the $35 billion range. It doesn't come close to providing the funds necessary for Iran's foreign exchange needs, which run about $60 to $70 billion a year. So as I've said, it is economically insignificant to Iran, and it's insignificant in particular because of what remains in place: the banking sanctions, the oil sanctions, the financial sanctions, the fact that their ports are largely cut off. You know, this relief will not improve the economic situation in Iran in any significant way.
And then one last question that I want to ask about this. President Rouhani was elected in part because, unlike his predecessor, he was interested in negotiating with the international community. But he still has to contend with a significant number of hardliners who oppose negotiations. So, Undersecretary Sherman, if Congress passes additional sanctions now, even sanctions that don't kick in, unless the negotiators fail to reach a final agreement in 6 months, would that make it more difficult or easier for President Rouhani to make a final deal?
I think there is no doubt that if in fact sanctions were passed, that the hardliners would say, see, you can't deal with the United States, you can't deal with the P5+1, there is no good faith. And although that might indeed tank the agreement, as I've said, our greater concern is keeping the P5+1 and the international coalition together for the enforcement of the sanctions that remain on the books, which are vast.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.